2 Minutes with Veridelisi. Why are central banks reporting losses?
Does it matter to you? In the second week of 2024, the Federal Reserve, Fed, issued a statement that was not reported in the business press. The statement disclosed that, by the end of 2023, the Fed's expenditures had exceeded its revenues, resulting in a loss for the year. Not only the U.S. Federal Reserve, but several other central banks have also announced losses. These include the Reserve Bank of Australia (RBA), the National Bank of Belgium (NBB), the Bank of England (BOE), the Bank of Japan, the Netherlands Bank (DNB), the Reserve Bank of New Zealand (RBNZ), and Sveriges Riksbank. Central banks have been using their financial resources more actively in recent years to help stabilize their economies and achieve economic goals. Following the major financial crisis in the late 2000s, many central banks in developed countries started buying assets or launching lending programs to support their policies. The diagram shows that when the Fed buys assets, it increases its holdings of securities from which it earns interest, and it also increases the reserves held by commercial banks on which it pays interest. Central banks in advanced countries have expanded their balance sheets through these operations, with their balance sheets now amounting to 60% of their GDPs. The remuneration on reserves is closely linked to policy interest rates and has thus risen rapidly. By raising interest rates to combat inflation, the interest paid on reserves has increased. In contrast, on the asset side, the securities were mostly long-term fixed-rate bonds that generate a relatively stable stream of income. Consequently, this has led to a decrease in the net interest income of central banks. Central banks usually transfer their profits to the Ministry of Treasury and Finance. In case of a loss, we can say that no money can be transferred to the Ministry of Treasury and Finance for the relevant year. The annual impact on the general government fiscal balance should in general be modest. Over 2015-21, revenues from the central banks considered in figure rarely exceeded and were often far below 0.5% of GDP per year. The policy mandates of central banks include price stability and financial stability, but not profit maximization. Moreover, central banks are not subject to capital adequacy requirements or bankruptcy procedures and can operate effectively even with negative equity, as the central banks of Chile, the Czech Republic, Israel, and Mexico have done over several years. Furthermore, over the last 20 years, about a third of the central banks in small open economies have experienced negative equity, without it impacting their ability to fulfill their mandates. The CNB, Czech National Bank, actually had negative equity for 16 years from 1998 until 2013. Its negative equity peaked at almost CZK, Czech Koruna, 200 billion in 2007, which at that time was equivalent to slightly less than 5% of the annual GDP. Follow me, Veridelisi Substack.com. Veridelisi loves you.